I'll now hand over to Mr. Perry just to go through the procedure.
Excuse me. Thank you, Convener. Just to point out just at the start of this meeting that the agenda is in two parts. Items 5 and 6 are reports on service performance, and for these reports, all members of council are entitled to participate in scrutiny. So what we will do is we will go through the apologies, declarations, minute and roll and action log, and that's business that's for the committee members only. Then all members can participate in items 5 and 6. When we've finished item 6, the committee will have a short 10-minute break. That will allow members who are not members of the committee to leave the meeting. People who are in the room need to leave the table, and members that have joined online need to leave the meeting online. If they want to watch the meeting, they can of course jump on the live stream and watch there. So when we get to the end of item 6, I'll remind members who are not part of the committee need to leave. I think with that, Provost, we'd maybe move on to the first part, which is just the committee business.
Okay, thanks very much. First item of business is apologies.
Apologies from Councillor Aitchison, Convener, and I think Councillor Brown. I don't see her.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Members should declare any financial and non-financial interests they have in any item of business at the meeting, identifying the relevant agenda item and the nature of the interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No, thank you. Agenda item 3, minute of the meeting of the Scrutiny Committee held on 15th of December 2022, pages 3 to 7. Can we agree the minute?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Is there any matters arising from the minute? No, thank you. Agenda item 4 is the rolling action log, pages 8 to 11. Are there any questions on the rolling action log? Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Convener. I have a couple of questions. If I refer to page 9, the second item, Slomanin Primary School Early Learning Progress. I see that we're looking for a report here a year later from the original date of the meeting of March 22. Why is this still in progress?
Okay, Ms. Jake.
Thanks, Councillor. The inspection was indeed in November 2022, the follow-up inspection, and we provided our report for that. So there wasn't actually a visit to the school, it's just the local authority provides an update report about the school, which we did as asked in November. It was the 28th of March in 2023 before the HMI then convened with us to have an online meeting to discuss the report. And then it was the 2nd of May before they actually published their sign-off letter for the school. So that accounts for the timeline. So we'll be able to bring that report to you for the 7th of September meeting.
Terrific, thank you very much. If I could move to page 10. I've got a wee query again about some dates, and perhaps you could give a wee bit of clarification. Have the inspections happened? If so, when? And have the reports been issued? And again, if so, when?
Yes, they have, Councillor. So the original inspections were in 2021 for Bowness Public and for Rannoch. There was return visits in December for the one that you're looking at on page 10 for Bowness Public. So we'll be able to bring that report to you. It was late being published, but we can bring that to you again in September.
Thank you very much, that's great. And just a final one, Convener. It's on page 11, and it's to do with the deposit return system update. Just a wee query for myself personally. What's our position given the changes in government policy stroke implementation? Has there been an impact on the work that we need to be doing regarding the deposit return system?
Mr. Berry.
Through you, Provost, there was an update on the deposit return scheme to the executive. I think it was earlier this month, but the position with the Scottish Government is very dynamic. So I think it's almost changing on a week-to-week basis. So I think we need to kind of just be aware. I'm happy to update you as soon as we reach a position that actually is able to be sort of deliverable to you, if you like.
No, that's fine, Mr. Benny. I was just curious, you know, just as you say, the situation is quite dynamic. It is changing. So I was just wondering what impact, but you're obviously well on top of it. Thank you. Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor McCabe. Any other questions on the role and action log? No. Now on to service performance, agenda item 5, end of year public performance report. The council plan 22 to 23, and the report is by Miss Algie. Pages 12 to 37 on your agenda.
Provost, with your agreement, Rebecca MacDonald will present this report, if that's okay.
Okay, over to you, Miss MacDonald.
Thank you, Convener, and good morning, everyone. Before I go into the report itself, I thought it might be useful to set out the position of this particular report against some of the other key reports to be considered by committee this morning and just provide a bit more context. In a moment, I will give the overview of the end of year public performance report, updating on the performance of the council plan, but wanted to say that there is a bit of a golden thread from that report, which is woven into the fabric of the second report on the agenda this morning, which focuses on best value. Performance is one of the key themes referenced in that best value report, and in fact is probably one of the linchpins for the council to help us evaluate whether we are on track to achieve best value or not. So the golden thread is really important between the two reports, but that golden thread continues and is woven into the fabric of the third report on the agenda this morning, which covers the findings of Education Scotland's inspection of Grangemouth High School. And in that report, there are references to key performance areas, for example, literacy and numeracy attainment levels, both of which at a council level are reported in the end of year performance report, which I'll speak about in a moment. So the point I've just made really is to say that there are 3 reports on the committee agenda this morning that complement each other. And I just wanted the committee to get a sense of the golden thread binding these areas of work together. So on to the end of year public performance report for the council plan 2022-23. This is the first report of its kind to come to scrutiny. I'll give some background in this to set the scene as to why it has come to scrutiny today. If I can use the phrase again, golden thread, this is another strand of the golden thread which runs between all of our planning documents. If we start with the Falkirk plan that I know members will be familiar with, this is the top rung of the council's strategy ladder, and it was developed, as we know, based on lots of community conversations and in partnership with community planning partners. And in simple terms, using the Falkirk plan and the themes that emerge within that, all council plans flow from the themes that are there. And indeed, there were 6 themes, and alongside the best value work that's been undertaken over the past 12-18 months, these helped the council last year with the development of a new council vision, a set of priorities and enablers to create the council plan, which was approved by the council in September 2022. Now, to make sure that we have the means to track how we are progressing with the implementation of the council plan, and also to make sure the council fulfills its statutory duties to publicly report performance in delivering services, the council also agreed a strategic performance management framework, and that was agreed alongside the council plan in September last year to help embed a cycle of performance reporting and scrutiny. And the report that's in front of you today is a product of that cycle of performance reporting. And the update on this will form 2 parts. One is I'll take you through an overview of the report for the committee to consider and discuss once that overview has been completed. And then there's going to be a very brief demonstration of some of the tools being used to report performance going forward, just to give members a bit of a flavour about what performance management and measurement and the aesthetics, the presentation around that will look like. between now and sort of the lifetime of the council plan. So in terms of giving an overview of the report, I would draw your attention to section 4 of the report. And this tells us that the end of year public performance report, there's an acronym, PPR, for 22-23, is the first in a planned cycle of PPR, which will report to scrutiny over the lifetime of the council plan. It covers from when the council plan was approved last year in September, and it takes us to the end of March 2023 this year. Earlier, I mentioned a cycle of performance reporting, and the idea is that scrutiny will get 2 reports in any given financial year. So there will be a report on mid-year performance that will demonstrate how well the council has performed between April and September. So that's a sort of the first 6 months of the financial year, mid-year reporting. And then scrutiny would receive one that covers the back end of the financial year, the last 6 months. And this report covers the last 6 months of 22-23. And so it's the end of year report for 22-23. So hopefully that makes sense. So that's a cycle of reporting, 2 a year, going to scrutiny, and this is the back end of 22-23 that we're reporting on today. And it charts the performance against each of the success measures aligned to the council's priorities and the enablers in the council plan. So overall, we have 44 success measures for scrutiny today. They live in the council plan, and they are the measures that have been relevant to the period of September 22 to March 23 for that period end. The 44 measures are a combination of local performance indicators and a selection of local government benchmark framework LGBF indicators, which are collated by the Improvement Service. So for members who were previously familiar with the LGBF, there is a link in paragraph 4.5 of the report to My Local Council, which gives you the full range of results collated by the Improvement Service. However, our end of year performance report focuses on those selected LGBF measures explicitly referenced in our council plan. So it doesn't get into detail for the full suite, it focuses on those ones that we thought were particularly relevant to delivering our council priorities as agreed last September. So these 44 measures have been assigned to the We Will actions in the council plan, and these are all outlined in Appendix 1 of the report. And it sets out the key work areas of what the council will do. So each of these We Will actions in the appendix has a measure that quantifies what we will do and what needs to be achieved. And each of them has a target that's been set. And all of that was approved in September last year by council. So this performance report evaluates the 44 measures under review. It evaluates, did we meet the target set or not? And for each of the We Will actions, there's a bit of a commentary and an update provided just to sort of set the context in which the activity over the last 6 months has taken place. If we can move to paragraph 5.2, it states that the results for the 6-month period under review are grouped as, firstly, on track or exceeding target. So those are the results from that 44 set of indicators that are shown as green. So they were saying we're on track or exceeding target. There is a second grouping that's rated amber, and these are the performance indicators that we say have just missed target. And although we've just missed target, there is an inclination and a feeling that the performance was very close to meeting the target and will be on track and be expected to meet target by the next time we report, which would be in autumn 2023. And the third sort of grouping and rating is target not achieved. So those are the performance results that are being given a red rating. So you'll see red, amber, green in the Appendix 1 that just gives you the detail of how we've sort of split up the evaluation of how well we've performed. Table 1 in paragraph 5.21 shows a summary of the performance levels achieved, but would say again that the detail for scrutiny this morning is in Appendix 1. And I suppose I'd like to say, you know, just in terms of what has gone well, paragraph 522 shows some of the key areas of note that we feel have gone well. So they are rated green, that we've either met or exceeded target. And some of those areas include undertaking financial health checks, it's around interventions, conversations with community projects and partner agencies, engaging in capacity building. It's around street cleanliness. It's around primary literacy and numeracy, and some successes with Business Gateway. Now, that's not an exhaustive list of everything that we've met target or exceeded target on, but it's just to give, I suppose, some examples of where things have gone well. But obviously, there are areas for improvement, and paragraph 5.4 outlines a series of next steps that need to be taken to focus on these areas of improvement. And these will be built into a refresh of the council plan that will report to council in September this year. And I guess the next thing I would bring to your attention is the fact that we will report the next round of performance reporting to Scrutiny as a mid-year check at the November Scrutiny Committee. That's the next one scheduled, and that will cover April 23 to September 23. To move back up the report slightly, there is a paragraph, section 5.3, and that section refers to something called Power BI. So this will be part of the demo that will follow once the committee has an opportunity to discuss the report and the overview I've just given in the first instance. And then colleagues will come on the call and do a bit of a demonstration of the tools that have been developed to help us advance our performance reporting going forward. So, Convener, I would say that the recommendations are set out in the report for consideration. I'll perhaps pause there and say that there are a number of chief officers and colleagues on the call who would be happy to take any questions at this point, and hand over to yourself again, Convener. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ms McDonald, for that concise report. We'll now open up to members for questions. Councillor Anslow.
Thank you, Provost. I just have a couple of brief questions, both on page 15. The first one being breakdown priority. Can the officers explain why we've missed the target by 67% in supporting a stronger and healthier communities, please?
Who's taking that one? Mr. Laurie.
Yes, thank you, Convener. So what the chart on the page sets out is the number within each part, each phase of the council plan, the number of targets that are on track, the number that just missed target, and those have not been achieved. So 67%, as Councillor Ansell points out, have not been achieved. In terms of the detail of that all sits in the appendix to the report. So what I would suggest is if you turn to the relevant pages of the report, so this is from page 20 through to 23, then you can see why that result is as it is. So there's a number, for example, those relating to community asset transfer, where because of the position with the SPR, that's overtaken our initial target in relation to community asset transfer, that we haven't achieved that. So I think that what we can say, and if you look at the commentary, I think it gives a real sense of that. So this is the commentary on pages 20 through to 23, that whilst a lot of work has been done on these issues, that we haven't met these targets. But I think the reasons for that are quite clearly set out in terms of where we go from here. I don't know if that quite answers Councillor Ansell's question, but I think that's what you were getting at.
Are you satisfied with that answer, Councillor Ansell?
I am, Provost. My second question, if I may, is further down on the same page. regarding some of the priority areas that are going well. I'm noting that the saying street cleanliness is going well, which I'm pleased to see. I'm just concerned how that sits with the number of increased rat issues I'm getting from constituents.
Maybe go to Mr. Gardner for that.
Thanks, Convener. Through yourself. Yeah, no, I'm pleased with that result as well, Councillor Anslow. We also have a fairly new management team within the street cleansing service, and I'm confident that the indices that we mark street cleanliness on will carry on in a good trend. With regards rats, again, that's not something that's the service particularly deals with at the moment. We did have a pest control service, as you're well aware. We no longer have provision of a pest control service, but where we do have a waste issue and bad practice is evident, for example, wheel bins not being used appropriately, then we will take a focused approach. We will have officers that go around, speak to the householders and work with them, and then trying to identify a better way in which they can store their waste. You will obviously get rats where there is a food source and where's a waste source, and that does encourage rat numbers. So again, that's really why we have those officers available 5 days of the week to go around and have that dialogue and engagement with householders. If there's anything specific, if there are particular areas, Councillor Anslow, that you're aware of and it relates to a waste issue, then I'm happy to look at that separately.
Thank you, Douglas. I do have one or two issues, but I'll take that offline. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Anslow. Any other questions for officers? Councillor Nimmo.
Convener, just a quick question in relation to attainment in general. I mean, obviously the report highlights sections regarding attainment at different levels. When can we expect a report coming back to council or to the executive in relation to the attainment for each individual high school? I know there's particular problems with Grangemouth High School at the moment, and I wonder if officers could maybe comment on that.
Ms. Jay.
Thanks, Councillor Nimmo. We bring our annual reports to committee in November, usually about attainment, along with our improvement plan. We had planned to ask to bring an earlier one in September, following the questions that were raised at our March committee around about the variances in attainment at that time. We've already prepared a report around about the leaver destinations variance. So you will get information coming about individual performance once we've had the August SQA results in, because obviously we have to analyse them when they come in before we can write anything else.
Thanks, Councillor Nimmo. We'll now go to Councillor Forrest.
Thanks. Page 22, the participatory budgeting. This is sitting at 0.02% against a target of 1%. Who is it that sets the target? Why is that only a 50th of the target? What can be done, or what will be done, to improve this target? And do you expect to meet the targets? Paul.
Thanks, Councillor Forrest. We'll go to Mr. Gillespie to answer that.
Convener, thank you very much, and thank you for the question. This is a target that was agreed for local members through COSLA as 1% off our spend, which equates to just over the £1 million. It's an indicative percentage, and looking to take that further as the year progresses. Falkirk this year, due to timing of the budgets, because as members will read from the report, we have committed 3 million and spent 3 million regards to, or spending 3 million towards community choices. One of the things that was agreed was to, one, build up resilience with our communities to take forward full participatory budget of mainstream budget. We're now getting there. We've seen that from recent results and the influence that our communities are having on that. So our next stages of that are now, which is well ongoing now, is looking at our mainstream budgeting, seeing what budgets we'll look at putting that out to our local communities to help support officers to make decisions on and make sure that the committees are involved in that process. And we have seen that in other cases, and just recently within one service, the recent library strategy as well, where our communities were very much involved in deciding how we can use part of that spend. So these are the things that we're doing, and we're confident, very confident, that we'll see that percentage going up continually from now going forward, Councillor.
Thanks, Mr Gillespie. Councillor Forrest.
Thank you. That's a great answer. Thank you. I've got another couple of questions. A quick one is the increase in public Wi-Fi locations. It's really pleasing that the target's been reached. Are there any further installations planned, and what's the likely target going to be for that?
Provost, happy to answer that. We will continue to look at how we can improve the public Wi-Fi. So you'll see within the report that we put in place the council's public Wi-Fi within all of our library services. So that has helped improve that figure. So actually, if you count all of our libraries, we're probably beyond the target that's in there. We now need to look at what that target should be when the refresh of the council plan is done in September. But we also need to look at what's available out there. And we have also been working with other partners to look at how they can ensure some of their Wi-Fi is made public as well, rather than just being about the council's public Wi-Fi. It's about ensuring that as many of our communities as possible can access and get connectivity where they are, and in a very cost-effective way, given the cost of living pressures on a number of individuals right now. I hope that answers the question.
Well, that answers the question, lovely. And it's really pleasing to know that we've reached and attained our target for that. That's great. The final question I've got is on page 28. The increase in number of foster placements. Sorry, read that again. Foster carer placements. It's disappointing to note that the performance of 6 against a target of 15 is. Can someone explain what the reason is for not meeting the target? Is it just unrealistic? What plans are in place to increase the number of foster care placements?
For yourself, Ms J. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Provost. Yes, it is really disappointing that we have not managed to achieve the recruitment of foster carers that we had planned for. And that really is despite the fact that we've had really significant and considerable investment in terms of our approach from Falkirk Council as a great place for people to come and foster for our children and young people. It's a key tenet of Closer to Home in terms of the strategy to attract more foster carers, and we've had some real success in terms of our current foster carers being really eager to be the voice that is heard from others who might be interested in fostering, promoting fostering. There definitely is a national shortage of foster carers, so we are being impacted just as many other areas are being impacted. The target that we've set now is in relation to foster care placement, so a slight difference from how you've seen us perform against actual foster carer recruitment. So we're now not necessarily counting foster carers, but actually counting placements. Council supported us with our endeavours when the budget was set, and has invested for us to try and grow capacity within our current foster carer population, as well as continuing to recruit new foster carers to come to Falkirk. So we're definitely in a tricky space. We're not alone. We will absolutely continue with the efforts that we have in place. We've got a much better social media presence. We've really invested in our website. We're trying as many different approaches as we possibly can, making sure that we are trying to get the reach in every single way possible. But it's incredibly challenging, and I do think we will need to really consider what our target is going to look like, and within and being reasonable, I suppose, within the kind of current context.
Thank you for that. I commend your staff for all the hard work that they have done. It's great. It's very gratifying to see. And I note that there are some other local authorities who actually advertise on TV as well. And you know, I don't know how we stand with that, but I commend all your staff for the hard work that they do with that.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Forrest. Just wanted to ask, the question was about foster care, but how does kinship care fit into that? You know, there's a lot of families take on the children rather than them going into foster care.
You're absolutely right, Provost. And in terms of our performance around our shift of the balance of care and increasing our community-based placements, which is what Closer to Home is absolutely built on, we have much more success in that particular area. So we have grown our kinship care families by approximately 2/3 from reporting would have been a couple of years ago. That's a real place we need to make sure we've got continued investment in. So our foster carers and our kinship carers, all our alternative carers, are hugely valuable. And I think Falkirk Council really does demonstrate that. It's from elected members from the service, from letters that go out from the Chief Executive thanking our foster carers who have cared for many children, many of Falkirk's children for many, many, many years. We're doing very well around kinship care, and we've invested in our support for kinship. So we're reducing the number of kinship breakdowns, which is really positive as well. And we consider our kinship carers alongside our foster carers in terms of support and how we can help them with cost of living impact, and we try and keep as close to the issues that are relevant for them as possible. It makes a huge difference when children want to stay within their families, if at all possible.
Thanks very much for that answer. And I'll go to Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Provost. I'd like to just ask a follow-up question from Councillor Nimmo's about the attainment gap. And I think we all recognise how very stubborn the attainment gap is and how very much work schools and our officers are doing to improve on that situation. But there's been a fair bit of discussion recently about the issue of school attendance following the COVID years, that in some respects young people are less willing to attend school, and clearly attendance is the first thing you need in terms of improving the attainment gap. So I wonder if you'd like to just say a little about how that is included in the assessment of the situation and how much it's possible to measure the impact of attendance on attainment.
Monsieur, over to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hannah. Attendance has been a huge focus for the service, particularly for this year. It has been for the last couple of years, but this year we made it one of our council stretch aims. And we also made it an aim and an improvement priority for our Forth Valley and West Lothian collaborative across all 4 authorities, which is ourselves, Stirling, Clackmannanshire and West Lothian. And as part of that, we have the St Mungo's cluster piloting a very focused approach to monitoring attendance, and we're about to evaluate that whole programme. We have an attendance campaign starting from the middle of July right through to the end of August to try and target young people and families at the value of being at school and attending school. We've done a lot of work across all of our schools in primary, but particularly in secondary, about trying to show families and young people, if you miss school, you miss this. So if you miss a 10% of your attendance, then that's you missing X number of periods of learning. It's you missing the chance to achieve X number of qualifications. So we're trying to make it very clear and very understandable for families what the impact of missing school is, as well as trying to change cultures in schools where children really want to be at school, their families want them to be in school. So we now have, after this year, a better understanding of where we can target focused approaches to attendance monitoring, and we're seeing improvements already, particularly in the primary sector. And by the time we get to June this year, because that was one of our stretch aims, we'll have a really clear picture of all these things and what difference they have made. But we are also looking to see with our young people if they're understanding that if you miss school, you miss your chance to achieve. And we're showing them that by, if you miss this amount of school, this could affect you by 2 or 3 accreditations or qualifications. So it has been a fairly intense focus this year, and we're looking forward to seeing what data we can get back at the end with all the evaluations that we're currently doing.
Thank you for that. We look forward to seeing the reports on that. Thank you, Provost.
Thanks, Councillor Hire. We'll now go to Councillor Binney.
Thank you, Provost. Firstly, I would like to say to Rebecca, thank you very much for your report. There must be a lot of work in that, and I like the way it's colour-coded, by the way. I've got two questions. My first question is about asset transfers, and that's the target set in September 22. And the target was 2 community asset transfers. I'm hoping you can help me to understand the rationale of why this has paused, because potentially in future we may have more. I think surely it would have been better to make a head start, especially if communities already have shown interest. Therefore, my question is, are we in danger of communities losing interest? And also, can you explain why the target wasn't met? Thank you. That's my first question.
Thanks, Councillor Binney. We'll go to Mr. Binney for that, is it?
Is the question regarding the strategic property review or the historic CAT? Because I think Kenny would be more suitable for the the historic arrangements around community asset transfer.
Yes, the historic CAT, yes.
Right.
Okay, we'll go to Mr. Gillespie.
Convener, thank you very much. Councillor Binney. Yeah, originally it was set at 2 there, and this was just before the strategic property review took place. And as many members are aware, feedback from the public was regarding the processes and the procedures and what was happening. So we had a target of 2 working, certainly in silo at the time before the SPR, the strategic property review, took over. So then once we took the strategic property over, one of the things we wanted was consistency approach and speed. And it was one of our commitments, as members will be aware, is that we will have a finite approach and making sure that everybody's treated the same and at speed. So that is why nobody has been held back. There is nobody stopped. What the reason is that we've now made sure that it follows the same pathways as our strategic property review. That is the only reason that's not been achieved. It's just making sure that the right people are there at the right times, and that was a request from the communities and members alike.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gillespie. That was helpful to learn that. I've got another question, and it's under value sustainable workforce. And it's regarding the sickness absence of non-teaching staff. The result is actually nearly double of the target. To me, this has not just been missed. So how many employees does this relate to? And is there a trend of the type of sickness absence that managers perhaps have identified of the top 50 cases? If so, does that warrant further support? Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your question, Councillor Binney. We'll now go to Ms. Algie.
Thank you, Provost. Councillor, you're absolutely right. We are very high in terms of where we are compared to the targets. I think it's worth saying that there are parts of our workforce where absence is particularly high, and there are some parts where we are managing it very well and it is quite low. So it does vary across the workforce. And as you would anticipate, and historically we've seen higher levels in areas such as our craft workforce, and that continues to be the case. But also we've seen higher levels, particularly over the past 2 or so years within our social work adult services workforce. And I'm sure you'll appreciate the pressures that some of our social care staff were under. So there are very high levels of absence in some of these areas. There's a lot of work that goes into managing sickness absence, but I think over the COVID period, it has been stubborn in some areas in terms of just being able to bring that down. And there's a lot of pressures on some of our workers over that period too. So we are actively managing it. There is support that's there, but we do need to continue to do more on that. So we've also asked for our internal audit team to carry out a review as part of their 23-24 work plan, just to review the actions that are being taken across the council in terms of absence and what more we can be doing. I think the other thing that's worth saying is that this also links into the work that we do through the Council's Wellbeing Group, which the Chief Executive chairs, and the focus of that group is very much about how we can support employees' health and wellbeing to help them to stay fit and healthy and at work through different various support mechanisms. So I hope that addresses your question. Thank you.
It certainly does. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Councillor Binney. We'll now go to Councillor Robertson. Are you there, Councillor Robertson? Okay, we'll leave that for it. We'll go to Councillor McCabe, then Councillor Spears.
Thank you, Convener. I'd like to just make a couple of observations on some previous questions from colleagues. One is to do with the page 22, the community choices budget. It was interesting to hear that it's set by COSLA. It's a personal opinion of mine. I don't like the system. I understand why it was introduced, this idea of giving some control back to communities, but to me what it does is it actually sets community groups against community groups. I'll use just as an example, within my ward we had two major submissions for funding. One was Dunny Pace FC and one was Banknock Community Centre. They were looking for substantial funding, and you get this, well, I'm going to vote for them, I'm going to vote for them, and it becomes just a matter of numbers. I find it problematic. I understand the concept of it, but I think we potentially should maybe get back to COSLA to say, is there another way of tweaking this that we could maybe just improve the system? That's the first observation, Provost. The second observation was to do with the question of public Wi-Fi. Very pleased to hear that we are improving the Wi-Fi access, particularly within our libraries and whatever. Where I'm coming from on this, this is white hair here. It's real. I don't dye it. It's the genuine colour, and it's because of age. We go back to elderly who maybe not use Wi-Fi and modern technology for contacting the council. We've got a serious problem with contacting the council through our contact centre. I get it repeatedly, and I've heard it from other councillors about how our contact centre is not working. People phoning up to get in touch with the council, and it's just not working. I know that we've had it said it appears to be working okay. At the coalface, it's not. This is a similar thing to Police Scotland, where they're 119, whatever the number is. It's not working either, but there's a reluctance to almost by the organisations to accept it. I would like to think that the council could maybe have another look at the contact centre, and I would maybe be considering asking for a wee report to maybe come to scrutiny. But that's maybe for the future, Convener. I'll now move to the report itself, and I'd first of all like to thank Rebecca for her presentation. I thought it was excellent. It actually answered some of the questions that I may have had, and again, part of my input into this is, at the outset, let me just state that I feel we are travelling in the correct direction here. I'm quite sure that we are going in a positive direction. I'm going to be critical of it. Please don't accept anything like this as a personal criticism, but I think we are in the right direction of travel, if you like. Well, where I have a wee issue is page 15, where it's stated that the performance for this period has been largely positive. I've written down here, not true. And I modify that, I caveat that a wee bit by some of the response that I'd heard from Rebecca. But there are some figures here where, we're not achieving targets. The overall council plan measure, 39% of that is not being achieved. Supporting stronger and healthy communities, 67%. is not achieved. We're failing in that. Promoting opportunities in educational attainment, 43% is not being achieved. So that's problematic to me, you know. As I say, I think we're moving in the right direction. This is, again, another observation where, and it's purely for the process of this. This is the first time we've actually had a report like this. And I personally think that Appendix 1, for instance, we could sit here all day and discuss everything that's just contained in Appendix 1. I think potentially what we should be doing, perhaps as a scrutiny committee, as a council, is looking at this external to the scrutiny meeting and maybe querying officers externally to the scrutiny committee itself, doing a wee bit of pre-work, if you like, so that we can then get into the fundamentals of the report itself. But that's just, you know, we are all in a kind of learning process. I suppose my question, just to wrap all of that up, is that I'm pleased to hear that we get a mid-year report coming on the council performance. But on page, well, if you go to page 17, 7.2, an update on the council plan will report to the council in September. I think we need to be doing a wee bit of work beforehand to recognise some of the what I consider the shortfalls in the PPR here before the council plan is updated. So I suppose, I mean, just to ask a question, the figures, the percentages that are quoted, are officers happy with the percentages that are quoted within here? One of the wee ones that I'll just point out, and it just jumps out at me, and go to, again, page 15, breakdown by enabler. Financial sustainability, 67%, transformation and improvement, 67%, valued sustainable workforce, 67%. Anything like that just jumps out at me and proves a wee bit kind of problematic. I just wonder if, you know, are we happy with the percentage figures that are contained within the report? Thanks.
Mr. Laurie will answer that one.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Councillor McCabe. I think it is important that these reports and that more generally our work in relation to performance is subject to robust scrutiny. I think that's important from a best value point of view. I think it's important from an accountability point of view. And I think it's important in terms of being able to demonstrate to the public that we are providing good services, or where we're failing to provide good services, we're doing something about it. I mean, that's what performance reporting is all about. So, you know, I welcome the points made, and I welcome the scrutiny of it. Am I satisfied? No. Would I be satisfied if we showed that we were 100% on target? Probably not, because this is all about continuous improvement, and it has to be about continuous improvement. And I think if you look at the results in front of us today, you can see that in some cases, well, actually, we probably didn't get the target quite right. In some cases, we haven't moved something forward as quickly or as well as we would have wished. In some areas, we've actually managed to exceed what we thought we could do, perhaps substantially. And that, in a sense, might show that the target is not sufficiently challenging. So it's not an exact science. I mean, this is much more about something, you know, a presentation of information which can open up questions and challenges round about how we're doing as a council. So the short answer, am I satisfied, is no. And as I say, it's likely I never would be, because there's always more we can do. There's always things we can do better. Just in relation to the council plan, and I might look to colleagues for a bit of assistance on this, but it is really important that between now and September, in terms of the council plan, we do look at it rigorously, and members have a role in that. And that's not just about performance against the targets we've set ourselves. I think it's about, do we have the right actions in there? Does our experience of the last year suggest that some of these should change? Do we have the right indicators? Do we have sufficient indicators? Are these indicators a good measure of the actions that we've set ourselves? Are they proxies? Or actually, could we do something which is rather better by perhaps using different indicators? So there will be a process of member engagement across the summer. We will have a couple of workshops just so we can begin to tease some of that stuff out. What I would also just say before I conclude, two things. One, just a factual piece. This is about the participatory budgeting issues. So that, in fact, originated as a target that Scottish Government were hoping that all councils would achieve. There was a set date for that 1%, which was then delayed because of COVID, which clearly had an impact on it. But COSLA very much signed up to it. So it was a joint Scottish Government COSLA initiative. But I think we'd all understand both some of the advantages of going to our communities and asking them about how we spend money, but also some of the limitations of that as well. And just my final point, and Rebecca mentioned this in her introduction, and I know that we're going to go on and look at some of the tools that we use and will increasingly make available to members to use to scrutinise performance. But Rebecca also mentioned the local government benchmarking framework, and as a link through to that, I'd really encourage members, if you've got the time, to have a look at that. Again, not because it gives you absolute answers as to how we're performing, but actually the issue of relative performance is a really important one. So if, for example, in a particular area we're performing significantly better than the average, so in general in relation to educational attainment, we do really well in this organisation, and that's partly because of the kind of the rigour that is taken in terms of performance management. In other areas, perhaps we're relatively weak. The ones that are particularly in my mind round about that are the costs, for example, associated with our visits to sport and leisure facilities. So we are relatively expensive. Now, that's perhaps about the number of facilities we have. It might be about our charging policy, but it's the benchmarking framework is a really good way to get into some of that stuff and enable you as members and indeed us as officers to ask challenging questions of colleagues about why performance is apparently stronger or weaker in different areas. So, sorry, Provost, that was a rather longer answer than I perhaps initially intended, but I hope it was helpful.
Okay. Councillor McCabe, are you happy with that?
Yeah, no, I'm very happy with the answer given by Mr. Laurie. As I say, I do recognise we are all in the kind of learning process, if you like, and this is it's a work in progress, if you like, and that's why I made the observation of, Appendix 1, which is quite an extensive document on its own. I'll just to close off, convener, just give as one example. It's page 22. It's encouraging support in local third sector organisations to increase and develop community-owned assets. Now, we had a target of 2. The result was 0. It's still within the appendix here. My question that I'd put down, is this not an unnecessary objective now? The SPR supersedes much of its intent, if you like. The reason for giving that as an example is, I think, and again, this is to do with the process of the whole scrutiny thing, we could be looking at this document externally, compiling questions that then have to be answered by officers, and then when we come along to the scrutiny committee, we already have the answers to any questions that are required within the document. Thank you, Convener. Appreciate that.
Thanks very much, Councillor McCabe. I'll now go to Councillor Spears.
Okay, thank you. I would like to return to the education subject. The Chief Executive says it's about performance reporting and improvement. But what you're saying is that you're kicking it down the road to September to get answers. There is great concern, especially in Grangemouth, and it looks to me as the only straight A's we've got is attendance, achievement and absenteeism, and these are not good reports. Should we have a special measures, a special meeting regarding this? People want to know if they want to send their children back to these particular schools, and especially since we've kicked down the road the school buses distance issue, which isn't going to help in any of these subjects, attendance, achievement and absenteeism. So the Chief Executive says these are advantages. Can you tell me how they're advantages, and are we going to have a special meeting about the problems we're experiencing in education at the moment?
Mr. Laurie, do you want to pick that up?
Thank you, Convener. I'm not sure I fully understand the question, and the point I was making in relation to educational attainment is that, and again, you'll see this if you look at the local government benchmarking framework, you see the full detail of that, that the council has a really strong position in relation to that. And I think that comes about because our colleagues in Children's Services have taken a very rigorous approach to that, which involves, a high degree of, challenge and follow-up in areas of relative weakness. And there's a huge amount of detail that sits beneath that, which clearly isn't in the report today. And as Rona said, that comes before the executive on an annual basis. In terms of scrutiny and performance, and I do think that the scrutiny committee is a really important role in looking at performance. And there's already been a couple of suggestions, one from yourself, one from Councillor McCabe, about areas where you might want to spend more time looking at either performance generally or specific areas of performance. And both of these would be entirely legitimate and reasonable things for the scrutiny committee to do. And if the scrutiny committee does want to do that, it's a matter for the committee to make that decision, Convener.
Thanks very much, Mr. Laurie. Back to Councillor McCabe. Councillor Spears.
I think it's vitally important, especially in Grangemouth, that we have a special meeting regarding the education concerns that the people have here.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Spears. Any other questions? Councillor McCabe. Thank you.
Sorry, Convener, just there's one wee thing, there was matters of concern that I had raised there, but there was one wee issue that I had noted that I hadn't quite actually get around to asking on. It's on page 23. It's to do with interagency operating. Yeah, the interagencies operating, they agree to a 24-hour target, but potentially due to manning levels, this may not happen. I find that just a wee bit concerning. The target is 100%, the performance is actually 60%. Can I just query why that's not being met? I mean, if the understanding is that between all agencies, we will meet that, and then because of some agency, they can't meet it, can we have a wee explanation of why they're not meeting that?
Okay, Ms. Lucy.
Thank you, Convener. So firstly, just to provide assurance, as stated in the narrative, but we'll expand a bit upon that, that we are reporting performance at 60%, but there is mitigation in place. Now, this is a local indicator. It comes from current Forth Valley interagency referral discussion guidance. This indicator will be changing in light of new national child protection guidance that we're currently implementing in Forth Valley. So from my oversight of the work in terms of the implementation, the wording will change and that indicator will be changing. The wording is likely to be talking about these interagency referral discussions taking place as soon as is practicable. Just to kind of support understanding, so these interagency referral discussions take place between particular core agents, health, police and social work. Other people can join, education can join, third sector can join, relevant people, but the core agents are social work and police and health. So there is very, very secure triaging that takes place of any matters that come to our attention, anybody's attention through these agencies that could require consideration through an interagency referral discussion. These are really complex matters. There's a complex assessment that's required by all partners about whether significant harm is the assessment that needs the consideration, and that doesn't necessarily happen immediately for very good reason. These interagency referral discussions, these IRDs, take place with lots of information. So I very recently shadowed our staff undertaking the new electronic IRDs to see just the difference in terms of how this was being implemented. So it's a huge amount of information that comes. So people have to come fully briefed. So that does take time. So it isn't just about capacity issues. We are, however, and elected members will be aware that I've been talking frequently about increasing demand really since COVID. The demand hasn't really been dropping off. So we are experiencing really high numbers of IRDs. That does impact on capacity for certain. We are triaging. The most critical cases will have an IRD as soon as possible, very quickly, immediately, while some others with the information that we have can be delayed. So I'm hoping that provides reassurance where the actual measure came from and likely to see a change in that in future plan reporting.
Thank you. Councillor McCabe.
Thanks very much for the answer. At the start of the answer, I was very, very satisfied. The longer it went on, I was getting a wee bit more concerned again, only because of the numbers and the capacity aspect of it. I was really pleased to hear you say that, you know, the core agencies are there and they're able to handle it. My only concern was, you know, is the most vulnerable here that we're talking about, and I just didn't want a lack of resources having an impact on them. But I think it's maybe something that we could maybe kind of keep an eye on for the future. Thanks very much for the answer. Thank you, Convener.
Okay, thanks, Councillor McCabe. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. Just want to focus on what it, for very good reason, we tend to focus on the areas where perhaps the targets have not been met. But I wanted to focus on one where the target has been hugely exceeded. And that's on page 23. It's the offering of financial health checks for residents. Now, clearly, it's a good news story, but I'm glad to see that there are going to be a review of the targets, because it's also perhaps an example of a situation where it was the wrong target. And I think that's what I would like to see addressed in this. Sometimes targets can skew your reporting because the target is not actually what you want. A health check, a financial health check is important, clearly, and I'm really pleased to see that our staff have achieved that. But the bit that is more important is in the text there that says it undoubtedly has contributed to delivering additional income for households. And I'd be much keener to look at the targets and achievements on the actual income that has been delivered into people's pockets and therefore into the local economy. So I'm hoping that that review of the targets will look at not just whether we've met it or not, or whether it was challenging enough or not, but also whether we were focusing on the right subject.
Thanks, Councillor Hara. Any other questions? I've got a couple of questions I'd like to ask, and perhaps this one's redundant, I'm not sure. It's page 21, the cost per attendance for sport and leisure. The current cost is £7.39, which is significantly higher than pre-COVID cost of £4.10. First question is, why is this the case, and how does the council intend to reduce the cost to the council and run these facilities? The target of £81.44 is plainly an aberration. What is the target likely to be in 23-24, or might the PDP bring about these changes? Ms. Jay?
So I'm speaking here without the expertise of my colleague David Mackay, who's the lead for sport and leisure, but I'll do my best to answer you. So at the moment, we have this figure down to £6.49. And the figure of circa £80 was set during COVID and by the sort of local government benchmarking figures, and we questioned them at the time. But it is an inflation due to COVID, and it also includes the subsidy that Falkirk Council did pay. So whenever a resident went to any of our facilities, we paid over and above. So that's what we're trying to improve at the moment, and we've already got that down, and we're hoping to improve that even further.
Okay, thank you. Page 28 is the cost per visit to libraries. This is £8.09 compared to pre-COVID, which was £5.50. It's noted that the cost but is nowhere for the Scottish target of £2.09. What is the service doing to reduce library costs and library usage? Mr. Gillespie?
Thank you very much, Convener. And it's very much falling back what Kenneth said earlier on. It's regards to the performance itself just gives a ready reckoner to start. It's what's below the performance. So I'll give you an example of, depending how your council was set up, we spoke about this in executive previously, where if it was an arm's length, where our library service were the individuals were either in furlough through the pandemic. So what then happened is that they were not working, where library services were within the council remit, they were working, so they were still taking working and taking on online admissions through digital and things like that, where our council was not. So it's very much what is below the performance, which then every additional hit, even if it's electronic or by in person, brings that cost down, because you get more hits per the cost. So that's fundamentally one of the areas that will give a truer reflection of the cost. We have started collecting that data, and I'm sure members will see an improvement next year. Other areas that we're doing is we're very much promoting the libraries as a place for all communities to go, regardless, and that was again established just recently by exec, where we've got now a 5-year strategy for the library services, again built on the wishes and representation of communities and their staff.
Thanks very much, Mr. Gillespie. Next question is page 31. The growth deal, why is the target 0%?
Through you, Convener. There was never any ambition that we would be able to complete an outline business case within 22-23. It was always scheduled for 23-24. So it's a slightly undesirable target. We should look for a different metric on that one.
Okay, thank you. And my final question is on Council of the Future, about the percentage of projects delivered on time and budget. The figure seems low. How many projects are there in the Council of the Future, and why has the target not been met, given previous criticism of the Council for not delivering on its Council of the Future ambitions? Donald?
Thanks, Convener. Following year end of the financial year, we now have 8 live transformation projects in Council of the Future. With regard to the target, there was some slippage involved in terms of resources to make sure we could deliver against the plans. But I suppose just to give some assurance to committee this morning, There is much more robust reporting taking place on the projects. The projects are reported to the Council Future Board, and each service has a directorate board where there is scrutiny applied by each of the kind of chief officers within each service. Because of that robust scrutiny and review of the project reports, we have identified the issue, and work is now taking place following the financial year end to recalibrate these projects, get the plans for each project back up to scratch, make sure that the benefits are very clear and tangible, and do a resource check to make sure they are deliverable. So whilst we missed the target for financial year end, it's just to give some assurance to this committee that work has been undertaken, and with the reporting mechanisms we now have in place, they can certainly be tracked more robustly in terms of performance against the expectations that have been set. So, Convener, does that answer the question?
That's fine, Mr. Scott, thank you. My final observation is most of the big budget areas are represented in the report, but I don't see much reported on for roads. So something I think perhaps members could consider bringing to scrutiny at a later date. And so just going over reports that could possibly come to scrutiny would be waste services, roads, call centre, and possibly building maintenance. These are just my suggestions, and perhaps we can discuss them a wee bit later on. Thank you.
Convener, can I just echo that? I think, we were trying to get Councillor Robertson. I was aware that he had some issues with that as well. So
yes,
I'm pleased for you for bringing that up. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So go back to the recommendations. It is recommended that scrutiny 1, note the report and scrutinise the council performance against the key success measures in the council plan for 22-23. 2, note the information provided in the link to the full suite of local government benchmarking framework, LGBF, performance results for 21-22. Can we agree with recommendations?
Agreed.
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 Before we agree,
Pause that.
I project. I think we were going to have the presentations before, and then we were thinking we were going to have a little consideration of whether there was going to be further reports to come.
Okay.
So we also agreed in the meeting's closed that mark.
Okay. Well, we've not agreed at the minute, so my apologies for that. So we'll now go to the presentation.
Convener, if I can maybe come in, maybe just set the scene. As mentioned, there will be a brief demo of some of the tools being used to report performance going forward. So this morning we have Kerry Rayburn from the Programme Management Office and Alan Stewart, Service Manager, who will do a bit of a show and tell. We know that time is at a premium this morning, so it really will be just a brief show and tell to members, but would like to sort of put the offer out if a more bespoke session would be useful to see these tools in more detail. Would be happy to arrange something for another time. But in the first instance, I'll hand over to Kerry to do the first part of the show and tell. Thanks, Kerry.
Thank you very much. While I'm just popping that on the screen, I'll just give you a little bit of a background about the new tool. So this report has been developed using Microsoft Power BI. And this is a tool that the council has been exploring in response to calls from auditors, elected members, and managers for improved management information over the past few years. The dashboard report is designed to supplement the full report and appendix that we just heard about today, and it allows for easier benchmarking and trend analysis. It's going to live on the council's website in the Falkirk Performs area, and it'll be available there for anyone to access later this month. So the report is in the final phase of development at the moment. So this is a draft, and the structure and the style are just having their final tweaks. So it may well evolve a little bit over the next week or two. I'm going to just talk you very quickly through the dashboard. This is the first page, and here you can see an abbreviated button for each of the council's priorities. So we have here supporting stronger and healthier communities, priority 2, 3, and then the financial, the enablers for the council plan. So each of these is a button that if there's something specific you're looking for, you can click straight through and find it. However, there is also a handy performance summary page. So by clicking this big button at the bottom here, it'll take you through and give you that overview of performance across each of the priorities and each of the enablers. A dashboard, if you like, that summarises how performance has been. Then you can move through this navigation on the left here through each of the priorities. So here's the first priority, supporting stronger, healthier communities. And this drop down will show all of the success measures that we have identified to help us deliver that. If we take the first one, we talked a little about this one today. We have said that we want to coordinate and develop the way we inform and engage with communities to make it easier for people to have an active role in decisions that shape Falkirk's future. And we've said we're going to measure our success in that by looking at the percentage of Falkirk Council's budgets that are subject to participatory budgeting. On the left here, we have the target, and on the right, we have the result. And the button in the middle just tells you whether or not it was achieved. So this is a local indicator, and it's quite simple. I'm going to jump to another version, because as I said, this is a work in progress, and look at a different kind of indicator. So one of the local government benchmarking framework indicators. So if we take this one, for example, this is a we will statement that we said we will ensure children will meet their individual developmental and attainment targets, and that school leavers will transition into positive, sustained destinations by measuring numeracy. So we have the target set, and the result was 80%. But on this one, there is a little bit more information. Because it is local government benchmarking framework, we can click this middle button and it will show our performance against, here we are here, it will show our performance against a family group of similar councils. So it allows you to have that sort of benchmarking view at the touch of a button. And then also, if you move along to the right-hand button, you can look at the comparison or benchmarking against the Scotland figure. So this is a national figure, and it shows that actually for this one, we are ahead of the national figure. And it also gives you that handy trend analysis. So you can look back over the previous few years and see, so for instance, in this year, 2019-20, there was no testing done due to the pandemic. You can see pre-pandemic levels here, and you can see that actually now both the Scotland figure, not the Scotland figure, but the Falkirk figure has actually recovered from pre-pandemic levels. So there is just a little bit more information in there. And as I say, it helps to sort of look at the benchmarking and comparisons in a much easier way. It just brings it at the touch of a button. We still are experimenting with the look and feel of the report. And it's just going through the final sort of user experience testing. It's designed to be quite intuitive, and it will be live on the site, as I say, next week. And once everyone's had a chance to sort of tinker with it, we can offer the sessions that Rebecca talked about earlier on. So we can have small groups and just any questions that you might have on the report. We can answer those for you, and any slight tweaks that we can implement to make things easier for you next time, we can look at that as well. I believe I'm handing over now to my colleague Alan Stewart, who has another tool that he's going to be showing.
Thank you, Kerry. I wanted to take you through this morning the My Falkirk tool that we have. I'm going to show you the analytics on the My Falkirk tool. Members will be aware that My Falkirk is one of the council's online solutions which allow customers to interact with the council at any time, day or night. We have 145 digital services available through this resource, and we will be taking members through the application at a lunch and learn session on the 19th of June. Meantime, I wanted to show you how you can access analytics from the application, so that you can have a look at them perhaps before the session, the lunch and learn session. Members may not be aware of how to access My Falkirk analytics, so I thought it might be useful just to kind of show you in the first instance. So if you don't mind, I'll just share my screen and show you how to access the analytics. Can everybody see that? Okay. Everybody see that okay? Yeah. I'll assume that everybody can see that. On the My Falkirk Analytics, if you go to the Windows icon and then go to All Apps, you will see there is a company portal. And within the company portal, I'll just click on that. Within the company portal, there is an application for analytics. And if you double click on that, it downloads analytics into your tool set. And once you've downloaded that, you can just simply click on analytics in your kind of like your list of all the applications that you have available. When you click on analytics, it brings up this initial page, first of all, showing you the different statistical information that's available. And we're going to look at My Falkirk just now. So on the very first page, there is an overview of My Falkirk. And this provides all the information about My Falkirk since its inception in December 2016. You can see here that there's over 1.1 million total transactions have been taken through My Falkirk since that date. You can see that 55% of households are signed up to it, and we've taken in total income of almost £65 million through the My Falkirk tool. This just provides some further breakdown on this page. You can see the monthly income that comes in, and if you hover over any point, you can see how much income has come in at those particular points. And then again, how many monthly transactions are taking place at any point throughout the period of time. There is then some further, there's 8 different pages in total. So if I click on today, you can see this is up to the live minute information. So you can see here that council tax payments, paying it online, for example, we've had 170 transactions through that today. And yesterday at this particular time, just as a comparator, there was 112 transactions at this particular time. You can see in the overview number of transactions that was taking place and how much income has come through today. And then there's just some further breakdown of the channel usage, whether it's through the internet, phone to phone, or face to face, and whether it was payments or non-payments. So there's obviously some transactions are non-payments. And you can see here the services that have been used today, the volume of kind of services that have been used. So council tax being the number one that's been used today so far with 170, sharing that position with recycling and requesting a recycling centre permit for household waste. Moving down the kind of list on the left hand side, you can see all the different services that are available. You can see all the different services that are available on My Falkirk, and as I said earlier on, there are 145 services available on My Falkirk. And if you click on any of these, so if I just click on one, request a brown bin permit, it gives you some further detail there. So it tells you a bit about what the service is about. It then gives you information on when it was launched, how long it's been up and it's been live, and it gives you details about the total number of transactions, etc. So you can see since it launched live on the 6th of February, we have dealt with 29,500 transactions for a brown bin permit and collected that volume of money. And then you can see as you scroll down through it, you can see the ratings that people have given, how well it's been able to use the solution, and then how many transactions there have been throughout the day, and breaking it down by channel again, internet, phone, face to face. And then the transaction times that people have gone online and requested a brown bin permit. Interestingly, when I was looking at this earlier on, at 4 o'clock in the morning, 31 people transacted and requested a brown bin permit. And there's a number of statistics like that during the night. Moving on from the different My Falkirk accounts, and as I said, there's 145 accounts, services on the system, and there's information for each of those 145 systems, services throughout the My Falkirk tool. We can then break it down into kind of comments and ratings. So we can select any of the services that we have on there. So let's just choose one randomly, report a grit bin, and you can see the customer comments that have came in relation to report a grit bin. and we can show these only with comments. So some people don't leave a comment and it would just come up saying no comment. So we can choose it again just with only customer comments so that you get the breakdown of that information. There's then the ratings tally icon as well. And that just gives a further breakdown of the ratings, the kind of like star points as we go through. You can see in April there were kind of 4,337 people rated it, and you can see the different ratings targets. Some of these depend on what things that we've launched at any particular time. If people are unhappy with different things that we're launching, you know, like the ratings target can go down, and then as they get more used to using it, the rating target goes back up. And you can see here whether that's positive, negative, or neutral, the targets. And then there is a report generator on the system as well, which gives a whole host of information. So you can display the figures from any date to any date. So if you're looking for specific information, you can look at it, you can pick out a day, you can pick out a month, you can pick out a year, and it will provide all of that information that's there as well. And then finally, we have a league table. And the league table basically just shows the most popular services that we have on the system. So council tax is up there, paying it online, as we could tell by the amount of money that we're collecting through My Falkirk. And then you scroll down through and it shows you the most popular services that we have on My Falkirk. So that's a very brief overview of the kind of solution that we have, the My Falkirk solution. As I said, we'll be doing more on that on the 9th of July, the 19th, sorry, of June. So happy to take any questions anybody may have at the moment.
Any questions? Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. Could I just ask for a little clarification? Obviously, council tax is one of the big issues, but it shows the transactions, both in terms of the online payment and in terms of the requests for direct debit. But presumably, this doesn't include the amount of money paid by direct debit, although it does include the amount of money paid in the online. It's just the number of transactions. There's still a little clarity.
Yeah, it does show the. Sorry, it does show the volume of money that we're collecting through. I'm getting terrible feedback here. Sorry. It does show the amount of money that we're getting, that we're collecting through council tax payments. Yes. So that figure of that I said earlier on shows all the kind of like money that's coming through for each of the transactions that's made on My Falkirk.
Could I just clarify that a wee bit, just to say, is that every single direct, because lots of people do pay by direct debit every month, so would that overall figure include every monthly direct debit payment?
I would have to check that, Councillor Hannah. I don't think it's every direct debit payment. I think it's the ones that have been made, you know, like just paying through the online payment solution. So I don't think it includes all of the direct debits, but I'll check that and I'll come back to you if you don't mind.
Thank you. Thank you, Provost.
Thanks, Councillor Hannah. Any other questions? We'll just go to Mr. Perry to sort of summarise where we are.
Can I
sorry, Councillor McCabe.
Just say thanks to Alan for calling in from his villa in Bermuda. There's obviously somewhere on here that you've got the National Lottery predictor, Alan. I just want, you can tell me offline where it is. 19th of June, the wee presentation you're going to do, just for a wee bit of information. How do you see that happening? I mean, should councillors, when we come along to that, do we bring along our laptops for a wee bit of hands-on, or is it just purely going to be a on-screen presentation?
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor McCabe. And I certainly wish I was calling in from a villa in Bermuda, but unfortunately it's Larbert. Yeah, we will just be doing a presentation on it, but if any member wants us to kind of take you through My Falkirk at any point, you know, if any group wants to go through My Falkirk, we can do that individually. We can take that we can take that offline and do that. Certainly show everybody how to use My Falkirk, how to access it, help set up the laptops with all the analytics, etc. That's not a problem.
Thanks very much for the presentation. It was very insightful, and I'm sure it'll be a useful tool for members, for everyone really going forward. Barry.
Thanks, Convener. It's just to kind of maybe pull together the committee's thoughts. There was mention, I think, just when you were concluding prior to the presentation, that some issues you thought the committee might want to call for reports on, and these were waste services, roads, contact centre and building maintenance. Double check just that the committee are happy to agree that that's what they would like to ask for performance reports on, first of all, and this is just for the committee members.
I would say yeah, absolutely yes.
Agreed.
So that being
Agreed.
the case,
Agreed.
Thank you.
Sorry, I preempted the agreement there suspiciously. So that being the case, I suppose just how we schedule this. We have meetings coming up in September, November, December. I did think that possibly waste services, it might be too soon to call for a report just now, because I think it's undergoing a slight restructure, so it might be something that would come down the line once that's happened. So would it be the case you wanted the contact centre report to come in September, with possibly roads in November and building maintenance in December?
I think that's quite agreeable, Mr. Perry, because the just as you say, the waste service changes, they're not really impacting just at the minute. So just to give that wee bit of time, but for roads, it was one that I'm aware that Councillor Robertson's doesn't appear to be online, but he was quite keen about it. So yeah, I think we get that as quick as we could.
Sure. I think what we'll do is, if we take that as the agreement, I can factor into their own action log, and then if there's discussions behind the scenes, perhaps that one needs to switch with the other, we can factor that in. So you get reports at each of these meetings, but maybe not quite in the same order. I see Councillor Spears has got his hand up.
Councillor Spears.
I think I previously asked for education as well.
I think you did, Councillor Spears, and I think that was answered by Ms J to say that there was reports going to the Education Executive, and that's the proper channel for these reports. It may be when that report is seen by the Education Executive, they may wish to refer it to the Scrutiny Committee for further consideration. So I think it has to properly go to the Education Executive first of all.
Well, that's good. I'll certainly report it to Scrutiny.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Spears. Councillor Robertson, did you have your hand up there?
Yes, I did. Thank you, Convener. I'm sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties here this morning, so I do apologise. It was just in relation to the waste one. Yes, I'm happy to see that going forward and getting a report back later on in the year. Again, I do apologise for the issue I'm having at the moment.
No problem at all.
I think in that case, Convener, then the committee agrees to note the report and notes information provided in the report and calls for the reports in the sequence that I described earlier.
Okay, thank you. So can we now agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you. So next item of business is agenda item 6, best value assessment. It's a report by the Chief Executive, and it's pages 38 to 64 in your papers. Mr. Laurie.
Thank you, Convener. So in relation to best value, just to kind of run through, I suppose, the background to this, we had the best value assurance report published in January of 22. The following month, in February 22, the Council approved its best value strategic action plan. And then since then, we've had a number of reports coming forward to the executive, setting out the progress against the best value action plan. And the last of these was in April. In considering that final update report to the executive as officers, whilst we recognised and could demonstrate that there'd been good progress made against the best value action plan, our sense was there was more to do, and we wanted to undertake a a process of self-assessment just to get into the guts of some of these issues a bit more and consider the progress that we had made, and also consider what more we then wanted to do, which would be reflected in future versions of the council plan and the financial strategy. So we did some self-assessment work as senior officers. We then had a session with elected members where we did a self-assessment against our best value progress. That was last month, I think, in this building. And at that session, we focused on really 4 of the critical issues that come out of the best value assurance report. And they were collaborative leadership, which we've spoken about frequently, communities, performance, where we've just had an in-depth discussion, and also equalities. And what we've done in this report for the Scrutiny Committee is we've summarised what's come out of that self-assessment process, both from the officer and the member side. And we put out some of the key issues in a table at section 5.3 of the report, and then there's a more detailed summary of the outputs in Appendix 1. And as I said, what we'll do is, in terms of the key considerations that come out of that, we'll then reflect that in both the refresh of the council plan. We talked a bit about the process through to September, when we'll present that to council again, but also in the financial strategy, or indeed in other strategic documents that the council has. The second part of the report, and just very briefly at paragraphs 5.4, includes a brief update on the best value process as it impacts on Falkirk. And we are subject to a further best value assurance review during the 23-24 cycle. We're anticipating that will start in October, and that there'll be a further report published in relation to Falkirk in the spring of 2024. I think on the basis of the work done since the January 22 report, we can certainly demonstrate a lot of progress has been made. We still have some way to go, and that is set out, as I say, in the self-assessment Appendix 1. And in terms of the recommendations, members are asked to note the outputs of the self-assessment. Very interested to get comments or feedback in relation to that, and then provide feedback on any additional considerations on the council's approach to best value for 23-24. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lawrie. We'll now open up to members for questions. Any questions? Councillor Ansell.
Thank you, Convener. I just have one question. Embedded equalities first approach. I understand EPIAs will feature strongly in this. While it's true there has been an upturn in the number of reports which come with EPIAs, is it also true to say that this progress has been slow and inconsistent? What plans are there to ensure that EPIAs are provided as a matter of course?
Thanks very much, Councillor Hannon. Mr. Lawrie.
I can happily answer that.
Mr. Perry.
If it's any help. I think you asked whether it was true to say that it's been inconsistent. That is the case, that it has been inconsistent. There's been a lot of work done to improve the way that services develop and prepare EPIAs for inclusion in reports, and we're just starting to see that coming through now. Since this was published, you'll see that all the reports to the executive have equality and poverty impact assessments attached or provided. So it's been a slow process, but I think we're getting there. There has to be more training for services so that they understand exactly what has to be completed as part of a EPIA, but that's ongoing. And I think you would see by this time, perhaps next year, in fact by the end of this year, a marked improvement in the number of reports that have got EPIAs and the quality of the EPIAs.
Mr. Lawrie.
Yeah, thank you, Convener. I think progress was unsatisfactory. It wasn't quick enough. There were insufficient EPAs coming forward and the quality of them wasn't good enough. That was the view and something we discussed a couple of months ago at the management team shortly after the budget process. So the position we've taken now is have your EPI attached to the report in relation to reports going forward to the executive, the council, and it should apply elsewhere as well. Because if the EPIA isn't attached, then the report won't go forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Laurie. Any other questions? Any other questions from members? Councillor.
Thank you, Convener. It's to do with the question of leadership and the development of leadership. Page 41, continue to provide a programme of training and knowledge awareness sessions for elected members, including code of conduct, implement a programme of work to support culture change. And then at the bottom, I noticed that the auditors will report annually to the Accounts Commission on specific themes, and the first theme actually being on leadership. Can I ask where we are with any such report? Has it been pulled together, and when we can likely see something on that?
Thank you, Provost. Thank you, Councillor McKay, for your question. Yes, there's still a lot of work being done and will continue to be done to support members and officers through leadership. I think it's one of these areas where we've made progress, but we absolutely recognise that there's always more you can do in terms of the support and the development activities that we can offer to both members and to officers. So we will continue to do that and seek feedback on what may be helpful for yourselves as members as well as officers. In terms of the report, this is a new approach by the Accounts Commission in terms of thematic reviews of best value, and leadership is one that's being looked at across the country. The interviews and meetings with Audit Scotland have commenced. A number of officers have now met with their Audit Scotland colleagues on this particular review. They have said to us they would hope to get the report to us I would presume, based on what they've said, maybe just after the summer recess, but that will be dependent on the timescales and the other work they're doing, because they're also working on, for example, the sign-off of our annual accounts, which will inevitably take up a considerable amount of time in their work plans. But they were hoping to get some of that very soon. The work that they're doing on these thematic reviews will also feed into our overarching best value revisit as well, which is planned for later on this year and due to be reported next year. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, it does, Karen. Thank you. I think that does me just now, Convener. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor McCabe. Any other questions? Councillor Robertson. Councillor Robertson. I think you're on mute, Councillor Robertson.
I'm having serious issues here this morning. I do apologise. Page 48, define our culture. Again, process is limited here. Why is this the case? What work is still to be done, and what are the timescales?
Thanks, Provost, and happy to answer that question. So I think there's a huge amount of work actually being done on looking at our culture and what that currently tells us. But we recognise that there's more that needs to be done. We need to actually, so we've got a definition of what culture change needs to look like, but we need to work out what the right culture for the council is as we go forward. What do our practices look like? How are those reflected in how we do our business? What do our policies look like? What does our communications look like? So there's a piece of work that will commence early in the autumn, which will start to engage with our workforce on a number of these areas and just look at how we need to change as we go forward, what the views of our workforce are, what's important to them, and how we actually shift some of that. From that, there will then be some actions that we need to to take forward, but it will also mean practical things such as the way we write policies, the language we use, etc., and just to try and ensure that that reflects the culture that we're trying to achieve. I think it's also worth saying, though, that if you read anything about culture, it's worth saying that it takes time to make those changes. It's not something that happens overnight. So it is an iterative process and something that we need to continue working on. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you very much for that. Is it at all possible to have an update later on the year regarding this?
Rob is happy to provide that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Robertson. Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Convener. I'm looking at page 41 again at the issue of communities and the importance of improving circulation of reports and promotion of community planning partnership website. I happen to be on the community planning partnership, and so I'm very familiar with the activities of it, but I think it's really important that all other councillors are familiar with what activities are going on and that is improved considerably. The things that the Community Planning Partnership are doing impact quite significantly on a range of Falkirk Council functions, but there are only 3 councillors on the Community Planning Partnership. So I think it's really important that there's more work done in terms of ensuring that all councillors are advised of the activities and the outcomes of those activities.
I think that's an excellent point, Councillor Hannah. You know, community planning partnerships in it. Well, we'll go to Mr. Gillespie to maybe perhaps make some commentary on that. You're on mute, Mr. Gillespie.
Provost, there's many wanted to do that, I can assure you. Apologies about that.
That's very true.
Thank you very much for that, and I can see our Chief Exec smiling at the same time, so that's good. So thank you very much for the question there, and totally agree with Councillor Hannah. As Councillor Hannah is aware, we have all groups, political party, main groups represented at that, and the minutes are there, but it's also something that we're looking to do within the partnership, is to send out a copy of the completed minutes of the meetings, and then take any individual issues that members have out with that to the relevant teams, Provost. Thereafter that will help scope for future information that would be helpful to members and council.
Councillor Hannah.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
look
Thanks.
forward to seeing more information.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Mr. Gillespie. I just have a question. It's on page 62, develop an ambition to address inequality. I just wondered what, why is this limited? Right.
Thanks again, Provost, for that. I think most of the work, as you can see in the progress, has actually been carried out. The council does have an inequalities self-assessment improvement plan, which was something that was required by internal audit and by Audit Scotland, and we have prepared the equalities outcomes. So the council's mainstreaming report, which shows how we mainstream equalities into our business, and our outcomes report, which sets out what our new targets are going to be, was published at the end of April. The one piece of work perhaps that was lagging slightly behind was learning from benchmarking to learn from other organisations. So it's that piece of work simply that hasn't been fully carried out. I recently attended a Scottish Council's Equalities Network meeting, and that's the avenue by which we'll learn from other authorities. All the equalities officers from all the councils across Scotland attend that. So now that I've joined that networking group, I can bring back benchmark information to the equalities group, and we can see what we can learn, can see what other councils are doing and doing well. So it's just that one piece of work which meant it was limited. The main and the bigger pieces of work, I would suggest, such as the improvement plan and the mainstreaming report, have been carried out.
Okay. Yeah, thanks very much, Mr. Perry. We'll now go to Councillor Binney.
Yeah, it's just a wee observation. I mean, we've got a lot of equalities champions, we've got a veterans champion, we've got a young persons champion, got an older persons champion, got all these champions. I think there could be a couple more. How do we bring them all together And I mean, the work they're doing actually in our communities, the information they're receiving from all various places, how can that be collected and given out to us all? Because there could be some new initiatives within that would help us all in the work that we do.
Mr. Perry.
Yeah, thanks for that question. As I recall, when Council agreed to establish the champions, just at the end the statutory meeting back in May, it also agreed to ask for reports back from the champions. So that's something which we'll have to actively progress, and we can do that, and they would be reported back by some mechanism to all members.
That's good. So when will that happen, Brian? Will it be 6 months?
There's still discussions to be had with individual champions. Each one's working at different paces, and one's not actually at work just now, I should say. So we'll have discussions.
Understand, yes. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Councillor Binney. Councillor Robertson, you got a question?
Yes, thank you, convener. Page 63, embed equality's first approach. I understand that the EPIAs will feature strongly in this. While it's true that there has been an upturn in a number of reports which come with the EPIAs, is it also true to say that progress has been slow and inconsistent? What plans are there to ensure that EPIAs are provided as a matter of course?
Councillor Robertson, I think you perhaps missed that. Somebody's already asked that.
I do apologise, I missed that one. I've obviously heard it, then just brought it back to the table. I do apologise.
Could I ask just a wee question, convener, please? Yeah, it's to do with page 48. I don't know if I should be asking it just now, Mr. Perry. It's about cross-party working groups, and we were talking about a cross-party working group on the review of committee structures. Has that happened yet? Have we?
No, it hasn't happened. I understand that there's going to be a report produced very shortly by the Chief Governance Officer, and that will kick-start the meeting, but we haven't quite got there with that yet.
Okay, so we'll go to the recommendations. It's recommended that Scrutiny 1 notes the output of best value self-assessment undertaken by elected members and officers. 2, provide feedback on any additional considerations on the Council's approach to best value of 23-24. Can we agree the recommendations?
Agreed.
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 Okay,
Agreed.
So we'll now take a 10-minute break while those not in the committee leave the meeting. Thank you. Okay, well, welcome back, everyone. Next item of business is agenda item 7, Grangehouse High School report. And we'll go over to Miss Jafer to speak to her report.
Thank you, everybody, and a special thank you to those who've stayed with us. We've gone from a cast of quite a few to a small and bijou group. So thank you for staying. And I'm joined this morning by Julia Backley, to my left here, who's the Link Team Manager for Grangemouth High, and Mr. Brian Miller, who's the Head Teacher of Grangemouth High School. And we're really pleased to have the opportunity to share the positives of the inspection report and the work in progress to take forward the recommendations, which is the purpose of our report. So Section 2 asks the committee to note the positive report and the strengths of the school, to note the work undertaken by the head teacher and his staff to progress recommendations, to note the continued partnership work between the school and education services officers to monitor progress. Section 4 provides some background information about the format of the short model of inspection and the recognition from Education Scotland HMI of the impact of the pandemic, as is detailed in Appendix 1, the 2022 Inspection Advice Note. And for your information, at the time of the inspection, the head teacher had been in post for almost 9 months, and pupils in the senior phase were sitting their prelims. And the attainment comments made recently in different forums have been taken from 2022 data. And again, the attainment comments in the report are also based on 2022 data for both the broad general education, which is S1 to S3, and for the senior phase, which is S4 to S6. In 4.1.2, we note the alignment of the HMI inspection findings with the school's own improvement plan priorities. And sections 4.13 to 4.3 direct you to Appendix 2 and page 74, which is the inspection report letter, which provide the quality indicator evaluations, key strengths and recommendations for further improvement. The inspection team evaluated quality indicator 2.3 for learning, teaching and assessment as satisfactory, and quality indicator 3.2 raising attainment and achievement as good. We're really pleased at the strengths that were captured about the calm, purposeful and encouraging learning environment for young people, the inclusive support for those who access additional support base, and the extensive range of opportunities for young people to develop their leadership, participation and interpersonal skills. As previously said, the areas for improvement reflected the school's current improvement plan priorities for the current and next session, and these included ensuring high quality learning and teaching experiences, continuing to develop learning activities to meet all the needs and ensure pupils achieve involvement, and continue as planned to use data effectively to track and monitor the progress of young people. Taking you to Appendix 3, which is a summary of inspection findings, pages 76 to 99, this adds detail to the areas of strength and recommendations. Of particular note in the learning, teaching and assessment section are the comments about the very positive relationships between young people and staff and the value pupils place on the support staff give them. In the raising attainment and achievement section, comments on the school's range of strategies and approaches to help young people progress, achieve and improve are noted. And we are particularly proud that the inclusive practice of the additional support centre as outlined in pages 85 to 87 is captured, and that this culminates in the feature on page 88 which recommends that this practice should be shared more widely nationally. Throughout, comments note the plans the school already has in place and where areas for further improvement have already been identified in the self-evaluation and quality assurance processes. Moving to section 4.4, it notes the confidence of the inspection team in the school's capacity to continue to improve and that no further visits are required in relation to this inspection. Section 5 to 5.2 outlines the focus of continued support and engagement by education service officers and the school team, and how the school's improvement plan for 2023-24 will build on the current action plan. And on this note, I would quite like to hand over now to Mr. Brian Miller, who's going to discuss the key points from the action plan that you see in Appendix 4, and that's pages 90 to 97. So Brian, I'll hand over to you at this point.
Thanks very much. Over to you, Mr. Miller.
Good morning, Convener. Thank you very much, Mrs. J. The inspection findings match those areas already highlighted by myself and my team during my initial months as head teacher at Grangemouth High School. From my action plan, which is Appendix 4 of this report, I would like to highlight 3 areas we are currently working on, which will be key elements of the school improvement plan for session 23-24. The first is on page 91, revision of the learning and teaching policy with all staff. As a school staff, we have all been involved in questioning what are the features of high quality teaching and learning, ensuring we all have a clear working understanding of what this looks like in the classroom, and we are on the journey to establishing a consistent high standard delivery model across the school. This work has been underway post-inspection, a focus for in-service days and staff meetings. Like many school establishments, this has involved supporting staff to readjust after the disruption of practice during the pandemic. As a result, we have seen increased classroom engagement. This has been noticeable during the SQ exam period, where the S1, 2, S1, S2 and S3 classes have been visited regularly by principal teachers, senior leadership team and peer colleagues as we enhance our self-evaluation processes. As we move into session 23-24, we have learning and teaching central to everything we do. In recent months, we have taken the opportunity to look outwards to good practice across Scotland and have developed a staff learning programme to be delivered in school, a professional learning programme for all of my teachers. Our ambition is to accelerate the quality of teaching and learning by ensuring immediate and sustained changes in classroom practice. The programme builds on what is already working well, then helps individual teachers identify the next steps towards increasing their impact. This work will also enhance our quality improvement and quality assurance processes as an extended leadership team, all principal teachers and senior leadership. so everybody actually understands the tools and processes most likely to improve consistent practice. This approach has the power to drive progress in whole school attainment through effective learning. The second point I bring today is the quality assurance and self-evaluation processes. These are key to the current school improvement plan. Since the inspection, we have been working with all staff and finalising a classroom observation document. Clear understanding for all staff is vital to understand the implementation of this. A full classroom observation document has been trialled over the past 8 weeks, where all teachers have been observed by the curriculum principal teachers, and SLT have been having 15-minute drop-in sessions around the school, visiting many classes on a calendared process for SLT to arrive, as well as peer evaluations and learning trios with staff. Clear feedback is vital to classroom teachers and principal teachers. Reflection and agreed strengths in practice and areas for further development will be core to this process. As we move into session 23-24, we plan to work further with staff, and a bank of pupil questions will be created to enable the triangulation of classroom visits. This will be done through our pupil voice group. The format of the classroom observation document will be discussed also at our parent council. And the last part I would like to share is we are developing clear processes sharing the needs of pupils with all staff. This is a two-pronged approach. Work with our additional support needs department to streamline the specific needs some of our pupils have, whilst outlining for staff how they can best meet the learners' needs. In creating this, we are creating a How I Learn Best profile. For me, it is vital we hear the voice of the pupils, and pupils being at the centre of our learning, and many understand how they learn best. Pupils are involved in discussions while this strategy is coming together. For next session, staff will work collegiately and faculties to detail how they manage to meet specific learners' needs. This will be monitored in department areas initially. Opportunities will be created in staff collegiate time to share this good practice. This also supports staff across the school, as banks of approaches will be shared, enabling staff to see what works well in particular settings, from a classroom setting to a practical-based setting. This will be quality assured by our ASN staff throughout the session to validate needs are being met and share further good practice of learning and teaching. I'd be delighted to welcome anyone into my school to share the learning and to meet my young people. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. So in conclusion, Provost, we would just like to say that we're going to continue our close work with the school as we move forward. We'll be providing, as we always do, that rigorous support, challenge and advice to take the recommendations forward. And this is part of our normal programme of engagement with schools anyway, with a particular highlight because of the action plan for this report. But I would like to commend the school for the progress they have made already in taking forward the recommendation from the inspection in November. And we're happy now to take any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll just open it up for questions now from members. Councillor Binney.
Yes, thank you, Provost. It's good to hear about the good progress this school has made by all the teachers in the school. And that's really good to hear. We like to hear about, it's important to hear that pupils' attainment's increasing. But I do have a wee question. I didn't hear any mention, and maybe it's not apt, is regarding the health and well-being of the teachers in the school, because obviously that works hand in hand, I would imagine, to improve pupils' attainment. So what measures do you have in place to promote this?
Councillor Binney, I'll answer you first if that's okay. And then I'll pass over to Brian. So just to be mindful that in this particular inspection, we focused on the 2 quality indicators that were inspected, and that was learning, teaching and assessment and raising attainment and achievement. So that's why the report and our highlights have focused on these 2 quality indicators. However, it would be remiss not to give Mr. Miller the chance to say all the things that he does do around about your question. So I'll pass over to him.
Thank you very much for this question. I think it is very important as we return from the pandemic, and that was also a key measure as we arrived back in school, that staff need to feel supported and ready. And I think that's where we are as a school. That's where we're moved on. That's where we have been unpicking the processes that were in place during COVID and how the staff are being supported within departments, supported with the faculties, supported with the open door policy across the school. Being a new head teacher, it's been actually vitally important to be that visible face around, that Kent person that staff can come and talk to. One of the initiatives we've actually just brought back, and it may seem quite insignificant, but we have a Cake Friday. So in staff, they come along intervals, they get the opportunity to gather together, and that's something they had missed. So it's clearly a priority for us as a school to see our staff are supported in their post, far less through the work I've described about how to ensure that they are delivering high quality learning and teaching, that they are high quality individuals as well.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor. Any other questions? Councillor McCabe.
Thanks, Convener. I don't have any questions as such. I just wanted to say thank you for bringing the report today and to recognise the positive direction again. This is a scrutiny committee. We can ask some difficult questions at times. I don't think it's really necessary on this occasion, but just to express my pleasure in the fact that once again direction of travel is very positive, and I'd just like to wish Brian all the very best in his new job, and maybe invite him back in a year or so and he can tell us some more of the improvements that he's made. Thank you, Convener.
Thanks very much, Councillor McCabe. I think one of the difficulties that education went through during coronavirus and how people managed to get through that, I don't know. But we're beginning to see a rebuilding again, and that's taking time, and pupils themselves and teachers need to develop that confidence again and reassert themselves going forward. I think the work that's been done on ASN in the school is quite remarkable. It's good to see that support. Also, I just wanted to ask about the PEF funding. Do we see that making a significant difference in the pupils? I mean, I know some examples that I've heard from other schools, but I think, is it making a significant difference?
Overall, yes, it is. And I think that's because as a service, we've worked very hard to make sure that we have a rigorous approach to seeing how that is spent and making sure that the money is directed to those young people, children, young people who are entitled to it, and making sure that schools are using the funding wisely and with impact on the learning and attainment of those children and young people. What we're now seeing is schools having the confidence and the experience in using this fund to try and help our families more. So they're now expanding beyond what can happen in interventions for children and young people in school and looking at how they can expand that support to support the whole family situation, because the impact of the pandemic, Provost, as you know, has impacted on families, not just on children and young people. So yes, we are seeing a difference, and what we're seeing a real improvement in is how well our school cohorts now can talk and evidence the difference it's making, and how they can show as data and improvement data about the difference it's made to specific individuals, to groups of children, to cohorts of children. We can now see very clearly what universal interventions have been provided that have benefited all children, and what things have happened just for those individuals who needed the help the most. So yes, it has.
Carol?
Sorry, just to interrupt, just to remind committee as well that there was an outstanding action in the role and action log to receive a report. I think we had a report in December 2022, and committee asked for a follow-up report in a year's time on exactly that question, whether PEF was making a difference, especially coming out of the pandemic. So that's in your work plan for later this year.
Okay, thanks very much. But for me, I think education is everything. You know, it's a sort of it can transform people's lives, you know, irrespective of their background, of what their home life is like. When they get to school, you know, they can be what they want to be, and it's life changing. So I have utmost respect for those in education, and always fully supported education. And it's a really good report. As Councillor McCabe, I think Councillor McCabe summed it up very nicely, actually. So I don't think there's any more to add, and I don't think there's any other questions, except I really would like to visit the school, particularly on Cake Friday. No, I would have liked to take you up on the offer to come to the school for a visit.
Thank you. Convener. Thanks. I'd just like to add to what my colleagues have said, and the Provost. Congratulations thus far. Wish you all the very best in future. And I know that you've got plans and you're going to get there. I wish you the best of luck. Yesterday I had the pleasure of going to the other end of the spectrum, the early learning centres at Lauriston and Park Hill. Fantastic job they're doing, just as you are. So I wish you the very best of luck. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Forrest. So,
and I'll come along on the Friday as well.
Aye, well, we can all go. Councillor Robertson.
Just like to say that I concur with what you've said, Convener, and my colleagues, and I wish the school all the best for the future.
And you're coming to Cake Friday against me?
Yeah, yes. I look like I need to go to a Cake Friday.
So, any other observations, questions? No. So I'll go to the recommendations. 2.1. Scrutiny Committee is asked to 1. Note the positive inspection report and the strengths of the school. 2. Note the work undertaken by the head teacher, Mr Miller, and staff to progress the recommendations of the inspection report. And 3. Note that the Director of Children's Services staff will continue to work with the school to monitor progress towards meeting the identified areas for improvement. Can we agree with the report?
Agreed.
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 Thanks very much. So agenda item 7 is local government in Scotland, financial bulletin 2021 to 22. We'll go over to Ms Templeman for that.
Thank you, Provost. I won't take up too much of your time today. The report on the agenda presents the Accounts Commission's Local Government in Scotland Financial Bulletin, which covers the period 2021 to 22. It's part of the regular reporting cycle for the Accounts Commission, whereby 2 annual reports are produced as a minimum, and that's the Financial Bulletin and a General Overview report. The Financial Bulletin was published in January 2023, and the General Overview report was published just a couple of weeks ago. I think it was around the 23rd of May. The Financial Overview report is a helpful report, but it is focused on the outturn for sort of 2 financial years ago. And as members are aware, there's been quite a lot of financial turmoil, particularly in 22-23. So things have moved on to some extent. The bulk of the information in the report will have been extracted from the audited accounts for 21-22 for all the councils. And I would anticipate that most of the messages in the report will be familiar to yourselves. They reflect a lot of what's been included in various financial update reports, for example. And so some of the main messages are around the significant financial challenges facing councils and the reliance on non-recurring funding. There's commentary on the ongoing debate around what's called ring-fenced funding, or funding provided for specific services. There's discussion on the quantum of funding that local authorities receive in cash and real terms. And when we talk about real terms, we mean adjusting to take into account inflation. And also capital is flagged as a particular area of pressure due to inflationary costs and shortages in construction materials. So I would hope that members would feel that they were already aware of those issues being in our system. And those areas also feature in the overview report, which was published, as I say, in May 2023. So the report itself highlights figures for Scotland as a whole, and in the covering report we have tried to provide some local context for some of those areas. You'll see that there's some charts on budget gaps, and that's the budget gap as a percentage of the net cost of services. And so members will see that Falkirk had the 5th highest gap in 21-22 and the 4th highest in 22-23. And that's clearly not where we would want to be. And in percentage terms for 22-23, that was around 7.3% of the net cost of services. And I think that reflects the discussions that we've had at Council on the reliance that Falkirk Council has had on non-recurring funding to balance the financial gap. And that means that in any subsequent year, the gap rolls forward and is increased by new pressures. And so that's a big part of the challenge that we face. So in 23-24, the budget gap was £25.9 million, and that's just over 6% of the net cost of services. So it was an improvement, but nevertheless, hugely challenging. At this point in time, there's no comparative information available across the local authorities for 23-24, but I would just flag that COSLA are collating financial data from all the local authorities to inform the work on the fiscal framework. And obviously if that data becomes publicly available, we'll be able to share it in future reports. But I think what I would say is it's clear from discussions with colleagues that virtually all local authorities are experiencing that acute financial pressure. And I think we saw evidence of that through the 23-24 budget setting process nationally. The report also includes some commentary on the local government pension fund, and that's an area which has seen quite a lot of change during the course of 2022. So it's noted in the overview report that the triennial valuation is underway. The next meeting of the Falkirk Council Pension Fund is on the 15th of June, and we will be taking a paper to that fund with some progress on the work for the triennial valuation, albeit it isn't due to report until the end of the financial year. And then finally, I would just say that the report again goes back to that financial outlook piece. And most of the information in that section focuses on 22-23. And we're in the process just now of pulling together the annual accounts. Those have to be with the auditors by the 30th of June, and that will have our draft figures for 22-23. So we'll be able to see how we've fared against budget at that point. And then I would just encourage members to look at the May 2023 Accounts Commission report, which was the general overview report for local government in Scotland. We will bring information back to members on that at a future meeting, but it was a sort of quite lengthy report which covered a lot of areas, and I think in general set out the position for local government really well, so I would recommend a read. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Just open up for questions to members. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Convener. When I first read the report, there's a number of comments that I felt were quite disturbing, actually. In page 100, the key messages, 3 out of the 4 I found quite disturbing. The funding increased in real terms economic situation impacting on councils, and the outlook for local government finances is challenging. I find them all a wee bit disturbing. Then moving on to paragraph 5.2, where we had an income increase of 3%. Maybe you could just explain this to me, Amanda, a wee bit. You say it's in real terms. You then, during your presentation there, said that real terms means including inflation. Because I had my note, I'll just read it out to you. We can hardly call it real term growth, with inflation sitting at around 10% when we're talking a 3% increase. So does that in actual fact take consideration of inflation into account? Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor McCabe. What I would just go back to is that this was 21-22's financial figures, and so it is quite a different picture now. As you say, you know, the inflationary environment that we're in now means that it's very difficult to envisage that we'll get over inflation settlements and that would be affordable, albeit we don't know that yet. But in 21-22, that was the first year that we got there was real terms growth since 2015-16, and that's what the report points out.
No,
I think it does feel a little bit out of date now.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. Thanks, Amanda. Penny should have dropped on that one. The 5.2 again, the third paragraph in that, the Scottish Government provide specific ring-fence funding. Again, I find that quite problematic because it's taken away the democratic independence of local authorities. I think it's a question that needs to be asked of the Scottish Government, whether it's the council independently or whether it's through COSLA. But the whole idea of ring fence funding for specific national policies, if you like, while understandable from Scottish Government's viewpoint, it does present particular problems to local authorities. And again, moving to the final paragraph. Can I ask, why are we identifying such a large budget gap? Yeah, why is Falkirk Council's budget gap apparently so large in comparison with other local?
Thank you, Provost. Thanks, Councillor McCabe. If I just go back to that point you made about ring fence funding first. Again, I mentioned the May 2023 overview report, and on page 19 of that report, there's quite a helpful graphic which sort of just notes the difference between the perception of how much of the council's budget is ring fenced. So the Scottish Government view is that only 7% would be ring fenced, and that's probably technically correct in the sense that there's only a certain number of grants which are classified as ring fenced grants, and that'll be things like the People Equity Fund that we heard about earlier. COSLA's view is that up to 65% of the council's budget is ring fenced, and that's because they will include in things like the IGB funding, because we're not allowed to reduce that, so we have no control over that area. And it also includes things like the spend and teacher numbers, because the government have put control on teacher numbers. So COSLA are saying actually you direct a lot more of the budget. And then Audit Scotland have kind of taken a bit of a different view. Now, I have queried that with them and asked them how they've come to that calculation, which is the 23% that was mentioned in here. But I think what's quite helpful is that Audit Scotland or the Accounts Commission have flagged that in this report and the May report. And so it's sort of generating that discussion and debate about how we take it forward. I referenced the fiscal framework discussion that's going on between COSLA and the Scottish Government. And one of the sort of aims of that fiscal framework is to try and, one, reduce the amount of ring fencing or the amount of directed funding, and two, to try and have a consistent message so that we're not sitting with different views from different organisations, and that we have one sort of sense of how much of our funding's directed. So that work's ongoing just now. I think there's potential for some reporting on that in the autumn of this year. So that might help to address some of those kinds of issues. In terms of the budget gap, I think that's a much more difficult question to answer, because we will all make very different decisions as councils, and the decisions we may have taken in terms of, for example, how much capital investment we've done in certain areas will determine how much our borrowing costs are, and that will impact on our gap. What I would say is that we've previously flagged in reports, and I know that the Chief Executive has flagged on a couple of occasions, that as a council we've historically had one of the lowest council taxes, but we've also historically had one of the higher provision of services. And there's a sense of those two sort of diverging streams at some point are going to cause us problems. And I think to some extent that's what we're experiencing just now. So the sort of need to redefine our services and bring them back into what's affordable, I think is becoming more urgent. And I think you're seeing that with some of the difficult reports that we're bringing in front of members. So if I look at certain areas, for example, teacher numbers, we've always had quite a healthy proportion of teacher numbers to pupil ratio. Things like, as sort of controversial as it is, some of the things we've looked at in terms of swimming pool provision or in terms of home to school transport, we have provided beyond the statutory minimum, where a lot of other local authorities haven't. Or maybe some of the charges that other local authorities levy for some of their facilities. So, and as we've said, our council tax being one of the lowest. So those things all combine. And I think those are the kind of issues that we are working our way through to see how do we sort of bring these two divergent things together, but it is exceptionally challenging.
Thanks very much for that, Amanda. I think you've basically reinforced my concern. I'm pleased to hear that there appears to be some kind of dialogue going on between COSLA, the Scottish Government, and Audit Scotland to try and, because they're each coming up with their own level of ring funding. It's only this, it's only that, it's much more than that, it's not this. So the fact that there's that wee bit of dialogue is quite encouraging. I'm pleased about that. Again, as you've kind of alluded to, it impacts on Falkirk Council. And my concern for the council, us personally, is that yes, we do have this historical position where we did have one of the lowest council taxes and one of the highest council service provisions, which was, to me, that's what we should be aiming for, if you like. But now, during these difficult times, we are having to bring these two polar positions a wee bit closer. My concern is that because of the ring fencing question, the pressures that are going to be put on, particularly Falkirk Council, because again, just to illustrate the two examples you gave, you know, the pools and school transport, very, very difficult decisions that we can't particularly agree on, you know. And I don't see why we should have to agree on making kind of draconian cuts like that. And my worry is that because of those two examples, our budget is going to have a shortfall this year, which leads me on to the budget gap illustrations, you know, from 21-22 to 22-23. They're showing us going in the opposite direction here to where we should be going. I mean, we'd move from 5th up to 4th, not the right direction. Our budget gap was 6.9%. It's now 8.1%. So our direction of travel is in the wrong direction. So I suppose, I mean, I don't really have any further questions, but it is just an observation. I just worry that, you know, unless we get the Scottish Government and local authority funding, I'll use the term loosened or slackened off a bit to take away from the ring fence. I feel like to give us a wee bit more latitude within the council itself, I think we're going to be in real problems next year, if not the year after. Thanks very much, Convener.
Thanks very much, Councillor McKee. Councillor Robertson, did you have your hand up?
Convener, I did, but Councillor McKee has covered everything I was going to be asking, so thank you, Councillor McKee.
Good.
Thanks. Councillor Forrest.
Thanks. Amanda, these figures going up to 4th from 5th, it's a real problem. How much of that is actually due to the huge rise that we've had this year in inflation? Is that something that we should take into account, given that hopefully the inflation is going to come down?
I think it's an interesting question. I'm not sure I've got a complete answer for it. I mean, I suppose the budget gap is 2021-22 to 22-23. So again, probably before inflation was really biting. But I think we have certainly seen the impact of inflation for 23-24. So we've talked about homeschool transport, where we referenced the fuel costs, for example. We know food costs are increasing. We know that capital construction inflation is a problem, and all of those things are leading to increases in interest rates, so the rate that we can borrow. And equally, all of those things are leading to pressures on our employees, who are understandably looking for an increase in wages. The difficulty is that with the wage increases, not so much, I guess, in some ways the public sector, but the difficulty is that we can get into a bit of a sort of wage inflation spiral, where if we are increasing, so if I've got a factory and I'm increasing my employees' wages, then I'm going to put the prices up, which means people are going to be looking for increases to be able to meet those prices, and we get into a bit of a spiral. I think we're seeing a little bit of that in the economy just now. What I would say is the difficulty with inflation is that it's cumulative, effectively. So you know, prices went up 10% in March, and even if prices have only gone up by 2% by next March, it's 2% on top of that 10% that was there. So that inflation just kind of keeps that building. Now, we may see, fuel's a little bit different. We can see the fuel price actually coming down, but most of the time the inflation is just kind of adding onto what the costs already are. So I'm not really sure I'm answering your question, other than to say that I think it's a cumulative thing. I think the fall in inflation won't necessarily, it might impact on that, on the gap to some extent, depending on the extent to which we get a funding increase. So at this point in time, the Scottish Government had indicated, well, last May 2022, they had indicated that we would get flat cash settlements, which means that there wouldn't be any adjustment for inflation this year or next year. And so that means that those costs effectively just add to our gap. They just become the pressures that we have to meet. Now, in reality, we, for 22-23, we did get some additional funding for some of the elements of the pay awards and things, so we didn't have to absorb all of that. But it's still an additional pressure that we are taking into the next year. So I do think it's going to be very challenging. I think capital is a particular area of concern because inflation is quite stubborn. I think interest rates will continue to rise. That does impact what the council can borrow at. And what we're also seeing is high interest rates for longer term borrowing as well. The rates are high as well. So it's not that we can say, well, yeah, it's not like we can say, well, the short term borrowing's high, but at least we can go to the long term. That's a bit better. At the moment, there's not that differential. So it is going to be a challenging year, no doubt. And the issue about ring fencing is an interesting one because if there was a policy area where the Scottish Government said, well, we're not going to direct you to spend money in that area. The reality will be that because we have been spending it in that area, that's potentially something we'll have to stop doing. A service will have to reduce or stop because we can direct the funding elsewhere. So although it would give us the flexibility to prioritise within our area, it will still come with some difficult decisions to be made, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, but that's what I was afraid of. The ring fencing, say we get £30 million for something, that's fine just now. It might pay the bills, but 6 months' time, that 30 million is only actually going to be worth 25 million. That's the scary thing.
I would just go back and say I think that has been a challenge because if you think about if we were given ring fence funding, say 2 or 3 years ago for a particular policy, and because we have effectively flat cash, that funding hasn't increased, but the cost to provide that service have increased each year, and so these are all things that contribute to our gap.
So just
Thank you for that.
Thank you. A final observation. It seems sort of no matter what we do, we seem to. I used to think, we'll make these service cuts. Flares get cut, the pest control gets cut. Care packages get cut. We make all these big cuts across the piece, and you think, well, okay, we'll make these cuts, and we'll start to reduce the gap. But it doesn't. It seems to be no matter how many cuts you make, the gap just gets bigger. So the public looking on, I think, well, all right, we'll have to live with that. We'll have to live with that. Then the gap gets bigger, and we say, well, there's more cuts coming. So we never seem to. I used to think, well, you make the cuts, and that'll be the end of it. And then you've made the cuts, and you've closed the gap. But the gap just seems to get bigger and bigger. And never seems to be an end to it. And I understand the inflationary pressures and all the things you've just talked about there that probably go to it. But it's really frustrating when you're making hard decisions and you get an announcement, the budget gaps increased.
Convener, make note of this because I'd never usually do it, but Margaret Thatcher once said about inflation, it was 10% on top of 8%, on top of 7%, on top of 6%, and that actual inflation is nowhere near 10% overall in that year. So it is death by 1,000 cuts sometimes.
Aye. So we'll see where the ring fencing conversation goes with the cost law. But that's another. So thanks very much. We'll go back to the recommendations. So 2.1 members are invited to note 1, the key messages set out in the Accounts Commission's Financial Bulletin 21-23, and 2, the local context to these messages. Can we agree with the recommendations?
Convener, just before we do agree, if you don't mind, I'd just like to ask Mr. Perrier a question, almost a kind of procedural question. we, as a scrutiny committee, could be asking for reports to come forward. I don't think we need a report here, but is there any way that we can, as a committee, feed back to full council and just express our concern? Because I think we're all, you know, coming from the same place here, and the fact that you know, it's going to be a tough year. Next year could be even tougher, and I'm just trying to find a way of the scrutiny committee highlighting to the to full council that we have grave concerns, and whether we're trying to G the full council to G up COSLA, to G up whatever. I'm just wondering, is there a mechanism for us? By the way, I just interrupted before. I'm happy enough to go with the recommendations, but I just wanted that clarified beforehand.
The only way that the committee could formally do that would be to put a report to council. I'm not sure what the benefit. I understand what you're saying, but I'm not sure what the benefit of that would be. It would be, there's plenty of reports that go to council already, and to the executive on the budget position. So it could just be that you could agree that at the council meeting, you ask the convener to relay this conversation back to council as part of that discussion. Otherwise, I think you'd be looking at a formal report, which I'm not sure.
No, I'm
not saying not to, but just I'm not sure it's the most adequate way. I think possibly just having the convener just to say on the back of probably a descriptive report by Amanda, just to say, well, we've discussed this and we echo, we have concerns, we echo these.
Yeah. No, I totally accept what you're saying, Brian. You know, potentially it should be a formal report or whatever. I don't want to get involved in that, like, you know, but I do think, because it's of sufficient concern, you know, and each of the members of the scrutiny committee are recognising it, and Ms Templeman has just, you know, illustrated it very nicely for us. Like, you know, I think it is quite important, you know, if we could give an indication back to full council in some way.
I was going to suggest somebody, probably Amanda's either going to say the same thing or something better.
I suppose I was just going to highlight that the updated financial strategy will go to council, full council in September, and that will look at the next 5 years, and it will also set out all of the context. So there's probably quite a good opportunity at that point to debate and raise these concerns. But thank you.
But I've also I was just thinking that through when Amanda was speaking. The minutes from this meeting will also be included in the minute volume, which will go to council. So that might be an opportunity when the minute volume is presented for the convener, and then possibly members of committee, just to draw members' attention to that point.
Good. Okay, can we agree with recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you. Well, that brings us to the end of the scrutiny committee meeting, and I think we've had a robust discussion on every item, really. So thanks everybody for their attendance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.